There are alarming signals indicating that the United States is gearing up for a military strike directly against Iran. But is this truly the case, or is it merely a high-stakes ruse to create a smokescreen in the negotiation game? Something the US has mastered. However, let's not jump to conclusions just yet, as right now a massive array of military equipment is quietly being deployed to the region to such an extent that it's hard to explain it by any reason other than targeting Iran. The deployment of B-2 Spirit Street stealth bombers to Naval Support Facility Diego Garcia signals that something big is coming. From their strategic position in the Indian Ocean, these bombers stand ready to project American power precisely where and when it's needed most. The evidence continues to mount as we witness an unprecedented military buildup across the Middle East region. The USS Carl Vinson Carrier Strike Group has diverted from its Pacific deployment and now steams toward the Arabian Sea, where it will join the USS Harry S. Truman Carrier Group already operating in those waters. Two nuclear-powered aircraft carriers, each commanding an array of destroyers, cruisers, and support vessels, now converge on Iran's maritime doorstep. Meanwhile, the guided missile submarine USS Georgia adds another dimension to American strike capabilities. This Ohio-class submarine, converted from carrying nuclear ballistic missiles to conventional Tomahawk cruise missiles, can launch up to 154 precision strikes against targets throughout Iran, from virtually undetectable positions in international waters. The submarine's stealth capabilities would allow it to operate even in contested environments where surface vessels might be vulnerable to Iranian anti-ship missiles. Behind this massive show of force lies a complex geopolitical calculation. The U.S. has intensified its airstrike campaign against Yemen's Iran-backed Houthi rebels, with reports indicating over 50 strikes conducted against Houthi leadership and urban areas. This represents a significant shift in strategy, expanding beyond purely military targets to include civilian infrastructure supporting Houthi operations. The military campaign aims to counter Houthi threats to maritime security in the Red Sea, particularly against Israeli and Western vessels. Yet this conflict with the Houthis appears to be merely a proxy battle in a much larger strategic confrontation with Iran. National Security Advisor Michael Waltz recently made the administration's position crystal clear. Iran must abandon its nuclear program in a way that is observable to the entire world. As President Trump has said, the situation is reaching a critical point. All options are on the table, and it is time for Iran to completely abandon its desire to possess nuclear weapons. They cannot and should not be allowed to have a nuclear weapons program, nor their strategic missile program. More alarmingly, U.S. Strategic Command, STRATCOM, has issued a statement claiming Iran has shortened the time needed to produce weapons-grade uranium from 10 to 15 Dalton Zeiss to less than a week. This acceleration represents a significant threshold in nuclear development capability. While producing weapons-grade uranium is just one step in the complex process of creating deliverable nuclear weapons, it's a critical milestone that drastically shortens the timeline from decision to deployment. Against this backdrop, diplomatic engagements between the U.S. and Iran remain theoretically possible. Kamal Karazi, an advisor to Iran's supreme leader, has stated that Iran is open to resolving disputes through indirect negotiations. However, direct talks seem unlikely under the current maximum pressure policy. Reports suggest Iranian Foreign Affairs Minister Abbas Araghchi has been authorized to advance diplomatic initiatives related to the United States, potentially signaling an opening for dialogue. The timing appears increasingly significant. According to multiple reports, Trump sent a letter to Khamenei proposing negotiations for a new nuclear deal with a 2-month deadline. This timeline creates both urgency and opportunity. The deployment of strategic military assets could serve dual purposes: genuine preparation for military action if diplomacy fails, or calculated pressure to strengthen America's negotiating position. Iran's response has been characteristically defiant. A statement attributed to Supreme Leader Khamenei declared, "If the U.S. or anyone else commits any wicked act against Iran, they will face a serious shock." The U.S. continuously issues threats, but they need to understand that we have never been the initiators of any conflict with anyone. However, if someone provokes a bad action, they must know they will receive heavy blows in return. Iran's defiance extends beyond rhetoric to calculated displays of military capability. Just days after Trump's ultimatum, Iran released footage showcasing vast underground tunnels housing missiles, drones, and military equipment. These facilities, built throughout Iran in undisclosed locations, present formidable challenges to potential U.S. military strikes. Many are buried deep beneath mountains or reinforced with concrete capable of withstanding conventional weapons. The timing of this disclosure was clearly intended to signal Iran's ability to protect its military assets and launch retaliatory strikes even after absorbing initial American attacks. This disclosure helps explain the deployment of B-2 Spirits to Diego Garcia. These stealth bombers are specifically designed to penetrate sophisticated air defense systems and deliver bunker-busting munitions capable of destroying hardened underground facilities. The B-2's unique flying wing design, combined with advanced stealth technology, enables it to evade radar detection and strike targets deep within hostile territory. Each aircraft can carry the massive ordnance penetrator, a 30,000-pound bomb specifically engineered to destroy the type of underground facilities recently displayed in Iranian propaganda. The deployment follows a pattern the U.S. has established in previous conflicts. Similar movements preceded operations in Iraq, Afghanistan, and Libya. While such deployments represent genuine military capability, they also serve as powerful diplomatic leverage. Historical precedent suggests the United States often uses impressive displays of military power to influence negotiations without necessarily committing to armed conflict. This dual-purpose capability creates strategic ambiguity that complicates adversary decision-making. The substance of these negotiations remains unclear. Trump's withdrawal from the original Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, JCPOA, in 2018 established his opposition to the deal's limited duration and failure to address Iran's ballistic missile program or regional proxy forces. Any new agreement would likely demand comprehensive restrictions on Iranian nuclear activities, limitations on missile development and testing, and commitments to cease support for groups like the Houthis. In exchange, Iran would presumably receive sanctions relief and security guarantees. Whether such an expansive agreement is achievable remains deeply uncertain. Iran's leadership has repeatedly rejected limitations on its conventional military capabilities or restrictions on its regional alliances. Supreme Leader Khamenei, who holds ultimate authority over all matters of state, has expressed profound skepticism about American trustworthiness after the JCPOA experience. Even if lower-level Iranian officials express willingness to engage, any substantial agreement would require Khamenei's personal approval. This creates a dangerous impasse. American officials appear unwilling to accept anything less than comprehensive Iranian concessions across multiple domains. Iranian leaders seem equally unwilling to surrender what they view as legitimate sovereign rights to develop conventional military capabilities and maintain strategic partnerships. With both sides adopting maximalist positions and a ticking clock established by Trump's ultimatum, the risk of miscalculation grows daily. The potential consequences of military conflict between the United States and Iran would indeed be devastating. Unlike previous American interventions in Iraq or Afghanistan, Iran possesses substantial conventional military capabilities and a geography that presents enormous challenges to would-be invaders. With a population of 86 million and a landmass nearly 4 times the size of Iraq, Iran could not be easily occupied or controlled through conventional military means. Any strike against Iranian nuclear facilities would almost certainly trigger widespread retaliation against American forces, regional allies, and global energy infrastructure. Iranian military planners have spent decades preparing for precisely this scenario. Their defense strategy, often described as mosaic defense, relies on layered capabilities designed to impose maximum costs on attackers. Advanced air defense systems, including Russian-supplied S-300 batteries and domestically produced alternatives, would challenge American air superiority. Anti-ship ballistic missiles and fast-attack craft threaten naval operations in the Persian Gulf. Most concerning to American planners, Iran's substantial missile arsenal could strike military bases, population centers, and critical infrastructure throughout the region. The Strait of Hormuz represents perhaps Iran's most potent leverage point. This narrow waterway, through which approximately 20% of global oil supplies transit daily, could be effectively closed through a combination of naval mines, anti-ship missiles, and small boat swarm tactics. Even a temporary disruption to this vital shipping lane would send global energy prices soaring, potentially triggering worldwide economic instability. Intelligence assessments suggest Iran could maintained such a blockade for weeks or even months despite American countermeasures, inflicting trillions in economic damage globally. Beyond conventional military responses, Iran would likely activate its extensive network of proxy forces throughout the Middle East. Hezbollah in Lebanon possesses an estimated 150,000 rockets and missiles capable of striking targets throughout Israel. Militias in Iraq could attack American diplomatic and military facilities. The Houthis would intensify their campaign against maritime shipping. These asymmetric capabilities enable Iran to wage war across multiple fronts simultaneously without directly engaging superior American conventional forces. Whether this strategy will succeed with Iran remains uncertain. The Iranian leadership has demonstrated remarkable resilience in the face of external pressure, often prioritizing regime security and ideological principles over economic welfare or international integration. Supreme Leader Khamenei, now in his 80s, shows no signs of moderating his anti-American stance or willingness to compromise on what he views as essential national security interests. If he perceives American demands as existential threats to the Islamic Republic's survival, he may calculate that resistance, despite its costs, represents the safer path. Nevertheless, Iran's deteriorating economic situation creates genuine pressure for diplomatic engagement. Inflation exceeds 40% annually, unemployment remains stubbornly high, and foreign investment has collapsed under the weight of American sanctions. Public protests, though brutally suppressed, reveal growing domestic discontent with economic conditions and political repression. Iranian leaders must balance their nuclear ambitions and regional aspirations against mounting internal challenges that threaten regime stability more directly than external adversaries. This economic vulnerability represents America's most potent leverage. By offering meaningful sanctions relief in exchange for verifiable nuclear constraints, the administration could present Iranian leaders with a clear choice between continued isolation and potential reintegration into the global economy. Such an approach would require American flexibility on issues like enrichment capacity and sanction sequencing concessions that might prove politically challenging domestically but could create space for a negotiated solution. Thank you for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.